Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Monday, April 21st, 2025, and today we're going to discuss germinating seeds in the field, balancing efficiency and soil health, and making the most out of chickens in the garden, the ones you intentionally put there, at least. So let's do it. All right, well, happy Monday, family. I hope everyone had a nice weekend. It's been warm here and almost muggy, which is a little early, but we often get some warm days in April, so it's not a huge surprise. This weekend was nice, though. I coached some soccer and enjoyed a couple days of just hanging out with the family and nerding out about water, which we will actually talk about tomorrow. I did have a big fail, though, this weekend in terms of the garden. I killed almost all of the grafted cucumbers. Here's the thing. Saturday, I had to coach some soccer games, and it was supposed to be warm and cloudy, so I was on the fence about leaving the cucumbers in the house just to kind of continue on, healing there, or move them out to the greenhouse, get them covered with shade, all those things. So I figured with the weather, cloudy, a little bit warm, but not too bad, they would make it through. If I just put them out in the greenhouse, they did not make it through. When I returned from games that day and was gone for, 6 hours or so, they were almost all very, very sad and did not recover. Put frankly, I rushed it. They were looking good, honestly, right when I took them out. That's why I took them out there. And now they are looking just dead. They're dead. I don't know why I pushed them so much harder than I would push our tomatoes, but I will try again here in a couple weeks. Now, I will say I did have one survive, so hopefully I can keep that one alive, and then I can at least have something to compare to the handful of non-grafted cucumber plants that I have left for round one. But we will all have to wait to get a better answer to that and how that went. Soccer is a sport all about decision-making. Farming, you learn quickly, is very much that as well. Lesson learned, don't rush their recovery. Okay, right now, if you walked into a Tractor Supply store or the post office sometime in the morning, you are likely to hear the melodious screams of hundreds of baby chickens confused out of their minds and on their way to a new family. Hannah and I are still very much triggered by that sound of peeping scared chicks after many, many years of raising our own. But that sound does mean some of you are likely going to be getting chicks this year, especially given the prices of eggs this winter, and perhaps wondering how, if at all, to incorporate them into your garden safely. On a production scale especially, but just in general, there are things you have to consider in terms of food safety, and there are also things that need to be considered in terms of their impacts on soil health, both nutritionally, specifically nitrogen, and physically, specifically dust bathing, so like giant holes in your garden. So let's talk about the good, the bad, and how to do it right. All right, so the potential starts when they're young in a brooder, when you are basically putting them out on the grass for the first time. They're starting to get their first true feathers, and then you're still often at that time bringing them in at night, but they can be outside for a little while so they can get used to the great outdoors. We often used a 4 by 2.5 foot tall brooder with chicken wire around it. That could be, we could just kind of like pull it across the grass, moving it a couple times a day when they were little, and maybe more often as they were slowly getting more feathers and turning into what are called pullets, which are just adolescent chickens. This is a great stage in terms of garden usage because they fertilize quickly and you can cover a large amount of space rapidly depending on how many chicks you have in a brooder, and they kind of stay put because they're kind of in a brooder. Obviously, as they get larger, they need more space than just that little brooder. So you can either graduate up to a larger chicken tractor and or switch to using electrified chicken netting to contain them. I will say that this electrified net is almost useless with pullets of a small enough size. They will hop right through it. So I prefer to keep them in maybe like a slightly larger brooder, like maybe like a 4 by 8 by 2 foot tall brooder, until they are, big enough to not sneak through the net so easily. Also, they are a delectable size for predators as pullets. So it's good to just keep them protected for as long as possible before letting them out into the open. Anyway, once they get to that point that they are relatively grown enough to at least let them out and about, this is where the garden impact starts to be considered more thoroughly because as they get bigger, they not only fertilize more, but scratch more. And if you have a nice mulch and or compost down in the garden, releasing chickens into that is like releasing a blender of sorts. They will also dig holes and dust bathe, which is great for their health, but not so great for areas where you don't want compacted chicken pits. So our rule was always 1 week in one space and then move them to a new area. And we always moved their chicken tractor about once a day because you don't want them staying in the same place again and again and again and just fertilizing one area overnight and fertilizing it again the next night and so on. The concentration of nutrients there would not be great. So our rule was always 1 week and then we'd move them. That is arbitrary because it depends on how many chickens we're talking about and how big the space is. But we like to move them off of our areas for parasite reasons and for impact reasons. On the food safety side, they never went in near food we were harvesting. For organic certification and the Food Safety Modernization Act, they can't. The 91-20-day rule must be heeded, which you can look up, but basically says no raw manure on the ground where food will be harvested for 90 days before a crop that does not touch the ground, like tomatoes, or 120 days before a crop that does touch the ground, like potatoes, lettuce, that sort of stuff. It's a bit arbitrary, but it is important to manage those potential food pathogens. So in general, even if not producing commercially, try to keep the animal manures away from your fresh produce. That's just smart, safe. So how we would use the chickens is that we would, for the many years that we had them, move them onto brand new plots before beds were built, or we would move them onto plots in the winter that had a short cover crop so they could fertilize that crop. The crop would grow and capture a lot of that nitrogen, and then we would kill the cover crop and be able to later utilize that nitrogen in the next summer. Cover crops are slick like that. That was my favorite kind of way to use them, but we would also have them go into plots at the end of the season where we had hay, and we'd allow them to just kind of clean up the crop residue, eat weed seeds from the hay mulch, and fertilize that space as well. Then after we moved them off, we could sow a cover crop there and get that kind of just reusing those nutrients. Of course, using chickens to help shred and enrich compost piles is another great way to utilize them. They're really good at just shredding and stirring your compost pile. Then you repile it, let it get to its temperatures, and voila, you have a really healthy compost pile. I don't plan to get chickens again anytime soon. We have too many free-ranging dogs around here right now, which is not my favorite thing, but they do keep the deer out, so there's that. But the potential for chickens is huge. They could, in many ways, replace the need for much composting at all, really, with the right garden design and regimen. Anyway, thoughts on how to use chickens in the garden? How do you use them? Let us know. Otherwise, we will take a quick break, and when we come back, germinating seeds in the field, BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. I started a CSA to grow food and build community, not to drown in admin work. Spreadsheets, emails, and pack lists take up too much time. If I could spend less time at my desk and more in the field, that'd be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand automates billing, newsletters, websites, and member support, saving CSA farmers 20 plus hours a week. Focus on farming, not paperwork. See how Farmhand can help. Book a one-on-one demo with founder Ari at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this content, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Ryan, who asks, quote, "Hey Jesse, I volunteered a nonprofit, read no money, market garden style farm that supports our local food bank. We're in a dry, cold area without access to overhead irrigation and use drip irrigation only. Because of this, we have trouble germinating certain seeds in the springtime as the top couple inches of the beds dry out quickly. We've had success using a small amount of hay as mulch to keep the soil moist, but it also cools our beds, which sets our season back by a couple weeks. We've invested in a silage tarp this year and want to try solarizing the bed with clear plastic for a week before seeding to warm the bed, and then put the silage tarp down post-seeding to keep the soil moist and warm for germination. We would then remove it about a week later before the seedlings die from lack of light. Do you have any thoughts or experience with this? Is there another way to accomplish what we're looking for without spending any money?" End quote. All right. Thanks, Ryan. And I love this question. Basically, tips for germinating seeds in the field with or without a tarp. So, or at least that's what I'm going to turn it into. So first, for the listeners, let's just go over what seeds require to germinate, regardless of tools or if they are started in trays or in the soil or whatever. Those are proper moisture, ample humidity, the correct temperatures, the right soil depth, and time. You could also add light to that list for our positively photoblastic veggie friends. And that is, of course, in well-prepared soil. So taking those one by one, most veggie seeds need to swell with moisture to trigger their germination. They then need to stay moist, thus the humidity, through that process without getting overly saturated. Like a seed sitting in water is not generally going to germinate. Then every seed has its temperature range and optimal temperature. So if the temps are on the lower side of that range, they will take longer, hence time's inclusion in their needs. And if it's on the higher side, they may germinate faster, but may not germinate as well. Like the percentage of germination of the entire crop will be lower. Soil depth is important as well, both for light access and humidity. Some seeds are very shallow germinators, so if they are planted too deep, they may not come up at all. Some seeds, like carrots, are slow as all get out and have to be kept moist for a week in warm weather or a month in cold weather. So all of those things have to be considered, or germination will be poor no matter what your soil preparation is like. So in terms of soil preparation, it just has to be nice and clean, and the seeds have to be able to have some soil around them to hold in that humidity. So all of those things have to be considered or germination will be poor no matter what. However, the tarp thing is effective at taking care of several issues, especially with slow germinators like carrots that are not positively photoblastic, if I may enjoy another excuse to use that term. So for instance, what we do to germinate summer carrots is to sow the carrots, water them in really well, lay the tarp down, white side up here in Kentucky, for about 5 days and remove it in the evening. That in the evening part is really critical for us. If they are up at all, when you uncover them, they will roast in the sun. That's the reason I recommend the evening, like removing it in the evening. If it's warm enough outside and in the soil, that 5 days should be enough time. You really have to watch it though, because if they start to germinate, they will get leggy fast. Same technique can be used for beets, lettuce, spinach, and other crops like that. In the early spring, you can also use the black side up to slightly warm the soil, which may be perfect for you and your sort of question here. But again, just pay close attention to germination under the tarp and check 2 days before you expect them to actually germinate. Or in the case of lettuce, just remove the tarp after about 36 to 48 hours. Now, one thing I remember seeing in 2019 in Quebec at Ferme Quatre Temps, that was like J.M. Fortier's farm for a while, was they were tarping and then adding a clear plastic film directly over top of it, kind of like what you're talking about, to heat the soil. So basically like they're heating the black plastic tarp with the clear plastic tarp. So I guess also the clear plastic tarp helped them to get through the snow earlier. So the snow would melt earlier, and then they would remove that clear plastic tarp and then either plant directly into the soil and recover it, or just take that black plastic off entirely. I'm not sure if they continued using that method of soil warming, but I think your idea is basically the same. And so except for they were putting that clear plastic right over the black plastic. And you could try this idea and maybe it saves you a step. Otherwise, yeah, drip tape can be obnoxious for germination. So potentially think of ways to get the water to spread evenly on the bed, such as dripping under a tarp, or pulse watering, or even shifting the emitters once or twice, which, yes, can add to the annoyingness. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, and thanks for the great question. We will discuss this a bit more in the summer when I'm germinating carrots in the heat, just utilizing a tarp for better germination. Now, I should note you can also use row cover or something like that to help. It will help warm the soil a little bit, but it will definitely help with the humidity part. Anyway, I think that's it for now. Otherwise, it's a quick break, and then up next, balancing efficiency and soil health. Be right back. Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still using QuickBooks for your farm's bookkeeping? You're wasting time and losing money. Farm finances can be overwhelming, but they don't have to be. FarmRaise Tracks is the all-in-one tool built just for farmers. Manage expenses, prep for taxes, run payroll, and plan for the future without spreadsheets or stress. Just clear, organized insights to keep your operation thriving. Thousands of farmers trust Tracks to make smart financial decisions all year long. It's time you did too. Use code NOTIL20, that's all caps, no spaces, NOTIL20 for 20% off the life of your membership at farmraise.com. All right, back to the show. So here's the thing. There are a lot of ways to be really great to your soil that are entirely impractical. Let me start with an example I ran into recently. We have access to pretty good amounts of shredded leaves, and obviously the soil loves the leaves, so I want to use them in the garden as much as possible. I compost a bunch of them, of course, but I have enough to also play around with them as a mulch, which is fun. But leaves come with a few challenges. First is the fact that they really want to blow around, like everywhere and blow into everything, especially lettuce mix, which is not fun. Shredded leaves are very, very fond of lettuce, just putting that out there. So as a straight mulch, they can be a bit of a challenge to use in the field, even when shredded. But I wanted to keep trying, and I thought if I used them nowhere near my salad mixes, and in a tunnel I had planned to grow kale and celery, that it could work out. So I mulched that tunnel with leaves, and a couple weeks ago I planted our celery into it. But the thing is, it took the better part of forever, give or take a few days, to physically plant into that thick leaf mulch. The leaves had to be moved aside, a hole had to be dug, and then I could place the celery in each of those holes. Each celery took several seconds to plant, and there were a few hundred plants, so although they may do well, and they probably will, and the soil certainly seemed rich with life and happy for a few months under leaves, the reality is that beyond backyard gardens where this is maybe more practical, I cannot recommend something like this for a market gardening situation because you would go broke planting everything into leaf mulches like this, just slowly one at a time. And the same goes for non-sprayed hay or straw or something like that. The soil will go bananas for that stuff, but planting, say, lettuce or tatsoi into a bed of hay or straw takes forever, especially in a situation where you can't just tailor exactly the mulch that you would like to the crop you want to grow, like compost for carrots, straw for strawberries, hay for hayberries, which I'm not certain is a thing. Anyway, that sort of stuff. In production context where that's not possible, a balance must be struck between doing the best ecological thing that you can and making a living. This does not mean, of course, that you need to abandon your goals or your soil health ideals or materials that you have. It sometimes means that you have to get creative with how and where you use certain mulches while also adhering to the principles of soil health and keeping the soil covered as much as possible, planted as much as possible, and disturbed as little as you possibly can, given your context and available materials. Like I always say, it's the as much as possible part of those three principles that I think often gets overlooked and may be the most important element. Maybe it's being more patient with the leaves and just waiting a year for leaf mold compost and restarting that pile every year while you look for something else to use in the meantime. Or like we did for many years, it's separating crops based on the mulches that work best for those crops, such as hay in the areas where you only plan to plant things like tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, garlic, etc., and not say romaine. Anyway, just a little perspective on the balance of soil health and economic reality, because sure, if we could also just use the best compost and unsprayed mulches in the world, we would just do that, but we would all probably go out of business, which seems like a bad thing. Anyway, let me know how you balance these things, and I'm going to wrap it up there. But first, a quick word from our friends at Rimmel Greenhouses. Whether you're growing tomatoes for market, flowers in the spring, or vegetables for your family, growing in a high tunnel protected from the weather provides the right environment for a harvest you can count on. Rimmel Greenhouses are strong, durable, and easy to assemble, offering the quality you need to grow productively year-round. The team of experts at Rimmel Greenhouse Systems will be your trusted partners to ensure you get exceptional value from your greenhouse or high tunnel investment. Visit Rimmel.com today to get growing. Don't forget, we are now officially a 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can find info about that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you are getting this podcast. That is always helpful to us. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No Till Growers. Also shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer over at no-tillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of April, soon to be May. Can you believe it? Anyway, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Stephanie Crocker. Little known fact, this is the story of an inventor who created a new form of travel inspired by Inspector Gadget of all things. That's essentially like a backpack that when you put it on and you press a button, propellers sort of come out of the back and it'll basically enable you to fly anywhere within 20 miles on one charge, which is pretty good amount. But one of the areas where this comes in the most handy, which they didn't expect, is in agriculture, where the helipack, as they call it, allows growers to just basically like float over their garden beds for planting and cultivating, almost all but eliminating the need for walking pathways and saving a ton of space, like acres and acres of walkways no longer needed. And this, it's a cartoon, details the many trials and tribulations that went into creating this invention with a lot of hilarity that I gotta be honest, a normal person probably wouldn't survive this invention, but Stephanie in their cartoon form rocked it. So anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow for Tuesday. Let's do it. Bye.
Emotionless in this world. story.